What would you sacrifice for duty? The war between the Illyrian sisters left a legacy far worse than the corpses of fallen soldiers. The peace forged by Delene's grandmother is crumbling. Calandra was left under the rule of a tyrant, and while Galir and Litana brace for another war, tragedy strikes Vedora, in an ominous turn of the wheel of fate. To save Aphiatis, Delene must protect her only child, Alara, even if it means sacrificing her whole queendom. Thrust into a fate she was not prepared for, Alara will be forced to watch her world burn. New alliances will be forged, new enemies will rise. Alara will learn the darkest secret of the Illyrian house, and yet the greatest mystery of all remains stubbornly out of reach. Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. For this week's video, I decided to once again dip into the Illyrian saga as written by Bella Dunn, this time with a look at the second book within that series, which I will show it to you soon. Darkness Unleashed. The cover follows a similar rule to the, to that of the first book, except I have to say that it kind of fumbles its appearance quite a bit more than that first book. Admittedly, as a scientist, the author probably cares more about what is, in the packaging itself, rather than how the packaging, looks. And yes, I did say probably, even though given that I'm currently doing a review of that book, of this book, I am, I would already know whether that is the case or isn't. And the truth, and I said it like that because I am building towards a conclusion. And I want to grab your attention so that you stick around until I can tell you what that conclusion is. Before I can present that conclusion, however, I should first give you perhaps first tell you why it is that I how exactly it is that I have reached that conclusion. And to do that, I will start with with telling you my impressions. My impressions in summary are: this book is a marked improvement over its predecessor. The the characterization is more focused, the narrative is sharper, or the other way around, and perhaps more importantly, the world comes across as a lot more dynamic and more active than it did in the previous book. It is in that sense a very welcome addition to the series as a whole, and in fact, I would argue very much makes the sorry about that. I could argue it very much makes the it brings the quite a bit of merit to this to the storyline that the author is really attempting to build throughout this series. I can at the very least say that it is quite captivating. So if you haven't been disheartened by the first book, this second book is bound to hold your attention. Do be mindful of the content warnings, though. They are there for a good reason. And also, I just noticed there's one line of the synopsis that I haven't read out yet. And that is, "Your fate will find you." Okay, now I've read that out too, and I've also given you my broad impressions. So now it's time to dig into some specifics. The plot of this book follows Delene's daughter, Alara, roughly a few years after the ending of the previous book, as Alara finds herself growing into her role as heir apparent to the monarchy that Delene rules over. As she is getting to grips with her new duties, however, a new threat, or rather an old threat, starts to reemerge. And because of that, Elara finds herself having to having to go on an adventure that that she very much did not expect would be would be in the cards for her. The book, oddly enough, or this book in particular, oddly enough, functions as a pretty interesting takedown of Elara's mother, Daylene. Given that it manages to take what is what would or should have been her greatest triumph, and very much turn it against her by showcasing the consequences of what said triumph actually ended up bringing forth. Still, when it comes to her daughter, her ambitions still ended up her ambitions ended up becoming perhaps more effectively materialized, both through her own merit and through events outside of her control, and control, which still leaves which unfortunately for Elara still leaves her in a position where she has to that she is unprepared for, but which in all fairness does still allow her the opportunity to perform to perform the task that she is most capable of accomplishing. There are various smaller storylines that that the book establishes, where that focus on various secondary characters who respond in some way or another, at least, to that same tide that that Daylin and Elara did. Though admittedly, Elara has a somewhat easier time of it because of various Dix machina that function in her favor. That is normally a problem, but in this case, in the case of this book, it is actually a feature, because this series has already been established to have an active deity, an active deity influencing the events. So said deity also playing a role within the plot is very much a good thing. When it comes to things when it comes to established things, however, something that gets screwed over by the lack of them is actually the world building. Because for the sake of this plot, the author has to sketch out a new monarchy, more or less from scratch, and also showcase how said monarchy crumbles and shifts under under a new leadership paradigm. And then she has to showcase that same shift with basically the rest of the continent as well. And and while that process is done somewhat effectively, I would argue, it still comes across as I still can't help but think that it comes across as a little bit too hollow, a little bit too convenient, too simplistic, because the various systems and people that who would either undergo or resist the changes that are introduced within this book have not really been effectively established within the within the previous book. So we don't really know who would so there are plenty of actions to describe, but there are no actors of said actions to no actors of said action to to really showcase within this book. Oh well, not everyone can be George R. R. Martin. Still, the new elements that this book presents, the previously mentioned Dix Machina, do open up some interesting new gateways for the series in the future. And when confronted with what is, with what this series has already, what this series has established when it comes to the operations of the villains, I do find myself looking forward to, to what could come from there. The issues of the world building are to some extent at least mitigated, or there is an attempt to mitigate them through the efforts of the characterization. Elara, obviously, because she's the central character of the piece, very much gets the lion's share. Gets the lion's share of it. With with how she is able to, with how much is of the story is presented from her perspective, and from how she shifts between between various parts of the setting, and gets to interact with all of them. That allows for her character to be presented in a very empathetic, very very personal manner, very effectively showcasing the conflict she faces between, or the struggle she faces between her desires and her duties. Various other, pretty much every returning character is is served quite effectively by this book. The new faces are fine, all things considered, but really the established characters is where I would say that this author has has dedicated the most attention when it comes to showcasing how it is that they respond to this threat, and how she is able to reveal new facets about each of them, allowing them all to stand out in their own distinctive and very engaging ways. The standout among these secondary characters is Brern, a young man who, due to some trauma within his within his past, has somewhat of a self-destructive, reckless streak. A streak which has up until the beginning of the series been somewhat effectively kept in check by by various guardians or parent figures, who, however, this book unfortunately forces him to be separated from these guardian figures, and he now has to contain that reckless nature, and act more responsibly, more aware of of his current situation in their absence, which I have to say makes for an interesting and compelling read, all things considered. It kind of affects me knowing that the narrative had the potential for at least a few characters that were like that, but unfortunately, they haven't been established either in this book or the previous, because, as I've already said, not everyone can be George R.R. Martin. Overall, while this book didn't really have the best, didn't really have the best conditions through which to build its expansive narrative, it has nevertheless proven to do so quite effectively, being able to create an engaging and enticing piece of fiction, in terms of how it is that it is capable of effectively presenting itself and the developments that occur within its established frame. My final rating for Darkness Unleashed is a 4 out of 5. And yeah, that was my review. Thank you for your attention. If you've enjoyed it, well then please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the book itself or to my review of it, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My books, the first of my own Heir to the Empire series, The Next Generation and the Path Not Taken, are available at various book retailers under their respective master links in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out should you choose to. And hopefully I'm gonna get some progress on releasing that third book I keep talking about. And as soon as I do, I'll update my social media. So now might be as good a time as any to choose to. So I might have some updates on that by the time you see this video. In which case choosing to follow my social media might be a little bit more worth it. I also have a second channel where you can hear me talking about whatever crosses my mind, though it'll primarily still be related to narrative analyses, but of works outside the print medium. So if that sounds like it could be of interest to you, then I suggest you go ahead and check it out. If, however, you want to hear more about my my thoughts on the print medium and selected works therein, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and go for my extensive backlog, where aside from an embarrassment of riches when it comes to book reviews, I also have writing advice videos, book rewriting videos, and videos on miscellaneous writing topics. So if any of that sounds like it could be of interest to you, go ahead and check out this channel. If, however, none of what I've said ignites your curiosity, well then go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was it from me. So until next time, I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.